All right, and we're live with another edition of Deconversion Stories. Today, I am talking with Objectively Dan. You guys probably have heard of him. He hosts a little show that's vastly becoming one of the more popular ones on the ACA's list there, called Truth Wanted. One of his last guests was Paulo Gia, who I'm sure you're also familiar with, as most of us are by now anyways. So Dan, basically what I do here on my show is I talk to people about their journey away from their belief systems, whether it be Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever, even if it's social or Scientology, sociology. So take me back to kind of when, I already sort of know a little bit about your story because I've watched you from like day one and heard you speak about it, but some of my viewers may not have heard this. So take us back to when you first started having kind of doubts and stuff, and what led you to becoming the activist that you are today, kind of thing. And we'll talk about that and whatever else too.
For sure. Well, my story, as you know, is kind of a little bit different than some people's in some ways. But I better start from the beginning before I get to why it's a little bit different. I started off, I grew up in a Methodist church, and then in my teen years, I started going to a Baptist church because that's where kind of the local youth group was that I hung out with a lot of friends in there and stuff. So I did the youth group thing. I was a pretty strong Christian for the majority of my life. I'd say even stronger than my parents as far as like consistency and going to church and stuff. I really did enjoy it. And by the time I got to my college, I joined up in a college ministry, an evangelical ministry. You probably heard of it. It's called Cru. And I was kind of a part of that. And also I became a student leader in that. So this is kind of the fast version of this story a little bit. This is me growing up in the faith. For the most part, I doubted it at some parts. I had a friend in middle school who came out to me as atheist. And that was my first real encounter with atheism. I was in 7th or 8th grade at the time. And for a while, he was like really convincing me. He was one of those really smart kids who really did his research on stuff. And, I tried to talk with him about stuff, and I couldn't beat him. And instead of, I think this is a thing with people, because like instead of kind of accepting that at the time, which, I'm like 12 or 13 years old at this point, who knows what I'm really thinking, right? I kind of rejected it in the sense of I thought that my friend had some sort of moral failing at some degree, which is why I ultimately did not accept kind of the arguments he was giving me. So I kind of had this judgment in the back of my head a little bit about atheists and stuff at the time, because I thought I saw some stuff going on in his family life, and I superimposed that onto why he was an atheist. Now I kind of came to the conclusion like, oh, he's just doing this now because he's going through a rough time and stuff, and he's kind of doubting God, and surely he'll come back to that later. And that kind of fueled my own beliefs in a way, because it gave me this sort of narrative that, this thing that I always hear my pastors say about what happens to atheists, that stuff bad happens in their life. Look, this is happening to them, and now my friend's an atheist. I can't let that happen to me, basically. I have to safeguard my faith. I have to be, more faithful than that. So in a sense, I overcompensated that a bit. And, like I said, was part of the ministry, college ministry for a bit. I did youth camp ministry as well. And I started to change that in my sophomore year of college, I think is when it was really starting to hit me, kind of freshman to sophomore year, in between there. And part of when that was happening was I had somebody come to our campus, and he was talking about, I believe it was the Kalam cosmological argument. And that was kind of interesting. I had never really encountered it that way before in like a formal presentation, right? And I was kind of like, I never heard of this thing. If this is like as legit as it is, why aren't there more people talking about it? And I kind of, researched it a little bit more, and eventually I found Armored Skeptic on YouTube. Kind of a controversial figure in the movement today, but at the time he was doing more atheist stuff, and I was kind of really fascinated by that, and I started to look more in those videos. And right around that time, when I was watching those videos, a man named Anthony Magdabosco encountered me on campus. This is where you come in, Neil, because this is where a lot of people see me. I was in one of his videos. If you don't know who Anthony is, he does this thing called street epistemology. and he talks to people literally out on the streets or college campuses or out on the trails on the city parks or whatever about their beliefs, like what they believe in. I just had conversations with him, and it was really fantastic. I had a great conversation with him. The whole thing lasted like 30 minutes. Yeah. And you know, like, even though if I look back on that video and I look at myself and I'm like, I don't know why I said some of the things that I did, but you know, the great thing about Anthony and using the SC method in general was I was never berated. You know, I was never told I was stupid or dumb. He just kind of explained what he thought and mostly just asked me questions. And that was really interesting. I remembered that encounter so deeply because he answered some questions for me that I didn't really know, including like what the real definition of atheism is. And I'm using scare quotes around real because people use it different ways. But an alternative definition that made sense to me, which was the lack of belief rather than, you know, I guess the existential belief of no gods or like a belief in science or whatever I was, you know, saying at the time.
Well, how did you define it though yourself before you?
I said, I believe if you look at the video, because it's out there, you can check me on this. I think I said it's someone who believes in science. I think that was what I, you know, and this was, again, this was.
Yeah, I think you're right too.
Yeah. Something like that. So obviously nothing that you or anybody else in the movement now would use, but you know, that kind of plays to my ignorance of it. And just that simple explanation, not to just, oh, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. It was just kind of like, oh no, this is how I kind of talk about it. That kind of changed me a little bit. I was like, wow, I never had anybody explain to me in that way. And a few years went by and I started getting more and more doubts. I started researching more and more. I remember watching some YouTubers while I was preaching at the Christian camp I was working at. I remember specifically watching a Apologia video right before I was going to go out and preach to the kids. The Thursday nights were my nights to preach at the camp I was at. And it was a really hard time because I was in an environment where it wasn't safe for me to come out at all. And I didn't feel like I could really talk about this stuff. I kind of talked about it a little bit with some people, sort of. I beat it around the bush, but I never, you know, like, maybe you relate to this experience, I don't know, but like when you research into something so much and then you talk to somebody else about it and they're like, and they just don't know the extent at which you've gone through. So like maybe they'll give an argument for something and like, you know, in your head, you could just completely demolish it at that point because you've already went through that kind of exercise, you know, and that's kind of where I was at. I didn't talk to a lot of apologists and stuff until after I was kind of out of it. It was mostly just, you know, regular here and there Christians, and then I just came out. Christians. I you know, like the people who believe but they don't have, I don't know, maybe they believe because their friends believe it or they just kind of just grew up in it. They didn't study like apologetics, you know what I mean? Like they're not the argumentative kinds of Christians, I guess.
They weren't like William Lane Craig Jr.'s or anything.
No. I didn't, like I said, I didn't encounter that until after I was starting to deconvert, which was interesting. That kind of, I have some stories about some of those times. But anyway, I came out and I was watching I didn't really come out. I didn't like announce my presence or anything, right? I just kind of silently said to myself, okay, this is where I'm at now. And I was watching a Holy Kool-Aid video, and Holy Kool-Aid was interviewing this guy named Anthony Magdamasco, because at this point I forgot who he was. In the sense, like I didn't remember his name. I just remember there was a guy on YouTube that talked to me. And I was like, this kind of sounds familiar. I wonder what that's about. And then he was like, oh yeah, I'm based in like the San Antonio area. And I was like, oh shit, that was this guy that I talked to. And so I messaged him on YouTube. I said, hey, this is where I'm at now. Maybe you want to talk to me about it. I don't know. And he drove over to where I was at, and we had kind of that second follow-up conversation that's on his channel. And since then, I've gotten way more involved with the atheist movement. I've been involved with the atheist community of Austin, where they produce Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen and stuff. I was a call screener for those shows for a bit. And then eventually I pitched my own show to them, kind of combining the best of street epistemology with kind of the call-in show stuff. And now I have it now. It's Truth Wanted. And that's kind of where I'm at today. I've been doing that since October is when we officially launched Truth Wanted. And we're already over 3,000 subs. We got quite a bit on Patreon too. And it's just been really fun. Just been really cool.
You're going to have me as a patron pretty soon because I think I'm going to add you to my list.
Oh,
I generally
sweet.
do the $5 a month thing. All I can really afford to do. So, but
Oh yeah,
want to help support, especially awesome shows like yours, man. So.
I appreciate it. And Neil, I promise you, I want to get you on. I think we talked about this before. I do want to get you on Truth Wanted at some point. A cool thing is, since I'm
That'd
kind
be
of running,
awesome, dude.
yeah, I we'll have to get that set up at some point because I like what you're doing here with the show here too. But anyway,
there's more to it.
yeah, for sure.
I also another series I'll probably be doing on my channel at some point, probably after the summer, maybe kick it in for my season 3 of this. I'm going to also do maybe on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. I'm going to talk to atheists about altruism. And if you have me on your show, well, I can tell you anyways, but basically, I don't know if you know about it or not, but my dad was BC's highest blood donor. And when he passed away from bladder cancer, he was a huge missing thing because he did over 532 donations in his lifetime. So I started a Partners for Life group, which is in Canada at Canadian Blood Services. And in my first year, I managed to get just under 200 people to join my group just because of a TV news spot that I did. And when they first asked me to make a pledge, I'm like, well, I figure, I'm a mouthy bastard, so I could probably get enough people in here to break my dad's numbers. And they kind of looked at each other and they're like, well, this has never happened in Canadian history, like ever. But
wow.
Why don't you do something more conservative, like say 50 donations for the year? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, you can write that down, but I guarantee you I'm going to break that. And after the first year passed, they provided a cake for me that said, you just broke your pledge by 1,240% because we ended up getting over 681 donations in the first year alone.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's pretty
awesome.
fucking cool, right? It's the thing why I kind of want to talk to other atheists about charities, like Jimmy just did that cancer thing last night, which I threw $120 at for raising the Kids for Cancer thing, right? So, and I want to talk to people like Jimmy about, just to show people that atheists aren't immoral pricks, right?
Oh,
we actually give a crap about humans, right?
About a month ago now, Genetically Modified Skeptic and I hosted a charity for the ex-Muslims of North America. And we didn't get it on stream, but eventually we did get to our $5,000 goal, which was really, really fucking cool. And one thing too that I'm very proud that I always get to say is the Patreon that goes towards Truth Wanted, I don't get a cent of that. All of that goes towards the ACA. The ACA is a nonprofit. We put on local events, and that goes towards making the equipment for the shows better, paying the people that do full-time work for the ACA and stuff. And just making that magic happen. So I like to say that I work for I do volunteer work for a nonprofit because I get to say that like that's true. Like I don't
yeah, it is.
So I just it's really, really fun.
It's kind of a bummer because I kind of wanted to be there. Are you doing Truth Wanted the Friday before the Faithless Forum?
You know what? So I haven't. I should have gotten this taken care of already. Sometimes, anyway, I don't actually live in the area of where the ACA is at, so it's kind of harder for me to get there. I don't get to spend as much time as other people, and the people that I need to make sure that happens with, I haven't gotten with. Short answer is probably not. I think we're probably going to do a pre-recorded show, but I need to make that happen because I'm planning on being in Dallas that night before we get on there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll be there too that night. I was kind of hoping that I could be there early enough where I'd be able to fucking whip down to Austin and sit in on your show.
Oh, dude, that'd be fucking sick. That'd be sick.
And then head back up.
People, I mean, if you and other people want to go down to Austin on Sunday and see the ACA, I think there's some other people that want to make that happen. We'll make that happen at some point. But yeah, for anybody who's watching the stream, definitely come on down to the Faithless Forum, April 27th.
Yes.
And I'll be speaking there, and lots of other people. Neil's going to be there. It's going to be a super big party.
Oh, so. wandering through the area there. So be the
Yeah.
loudmouth Canadian guy.
Well, you won't be the only Canadian. There'll be Shannon.
Oh no, I know.
And
Shannon
and
will
Paul,
be there. Yeah.
Paul Gia and all kinds of people.
She's already warned me that she's going to smother me with a hug. So.
Oh yeah.
I had her on my show too. So.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. I'm so looking forward to it.
I know, me too.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go last year, but unfortunately, the finances just weren't there. But I made it.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to live really close to it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's super worth it if you can go.
Anyway, let's get back to the story.
For sure, yeah.
That's all right.
So I mean, that's pretty much the end of that story. I mean, like, you know, I've been involved a lot more, and I've been able to do spots on podcasts and other shows like this. I would like to do more stuff because I obviously I can edit videos and do some other things. And the thing with doing Truth Wanted is I work with other people to help make that show happen. It's not just me. And I mostly have creative control over, 90% of everything. And I don't know if they know this. I would call myself director of the show. I basically run everything. I help get the guests and stuff. But I think what draws people to activism stuff on YouTube, if we're talking about like Paul and Shannon, for example, they make short 10, 20-minute videos on single topic stuff. And I think people really like that. It's really useful for people and stuff. And I would love to do more of that kind of stuff in the future for my personal channel. Like one, just talking about my personal story, but also just talking about, like what we can do as atheists, what we can do as humanists to kind of have conversations with people about belief, because that's my big thing, is having conversations, and how to approach things, because we do a really, really good job in the atheist movement of making really, really solid arguments. I don't think we always do a great job of being convincing. So I think making good arguments and being convincing are two different things. And a lot of people don't, make those two, don't disassociate those two things. But I really think that there's definitely more of an appeal we can have. Like we were talking right before the show, like there's a lot of people that just think we're monsters, like we're just not.
True.
And like I was telling like about my friend, like I thought there was some sort of moral failing there going on. And I think, the arguments, we've made a lot of good solid arguments. I think the rest will come by us actually talking to people, being a friendly face to people, and being a face for people to think of when they think of, oh yeah, I know an atheist. That's my friend Neil, and he's a great guy, instead of, oh yeah, I know an atheist. That's, I don't know, I'm pulling a name out of ass, Matt Dillahunty. I'm friends with Matt. I'm just pulling, Matt has a reputation among people. And that's great. He does great stuff for the movie. He does so much stuff, but or Christopher Hitchens, for example, let's say that, like he's known for like blasting people, which is,
Hitch slap.
Yeah. And that can be a good and bad thing, right? So
Sure. I think that's why I kind of took to the SE movement a little bit, because I thought, I'm a fairly patient dude most of the time, but I found out in attempting to have some of these conversations amongst people that I generally associate in my area here, that are believers, I found myself kind of losing patience a little bit with some of the ridiculous answers that they give you that I've heard like a billion times, kind of thing.
For sure.
I'm like, oh, come on, like really. Do I have to refute this again? Like,
oh yeah,
it's yeah. So that's not that I want to refute, but I it's coming up with the right questions, I guess, line of questioning. I need more practice. Let's put it that way.
We all need more practice. Everybody always needs more practice. Like I host a damn show, and I don't think I do the best job every single time. I like to think I'm a good example for people, but like I have my days where I'm not doing as well. That's just a human thing. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't like I was joking about Matt earlier, but like Matt is really effective for some kinds of people. He really is. And Matt, and if you ever meet Matt in real life, he really is a sweet guy.
I hope so.
When you do a show every week and you hear the same things over and over again, like you said, it's easy to whip somebody right then and there. You just want to be like, argument shut down. But as you know, when we study, human psychology and stuff and sociology, and we look at how people come to their beliefs, sometimes that's not always effective in our communication.
No, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
True. I do have I'm getting shit from my friend Nadine Kellen here in the chat, mm-hmm. and she wanted to know, and she's threatened that she would ask you herself if she had to, why objectively Dan and not subjectively? Does that say Don? Well, his name's Dan, not Don, but but why
okay.
why that choice?
Okay, so there's a complicated story behind this. And I've told people different versions of this story, and I'm going to tell a different version of this story. Okay. I hang out with the Secular Student Alliance at Baylor University. I didn't go to Baylor University, but I hung out with the ones there because they were the only ones where I was living that were my age and believed the same things I did. So you just kind of go, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? And Frank Turek came to the Baylor campus, and I was like, I had to go, right? And I went with some of my other atheist friends, and we saw his presentation, and I remembered, we talk about this idea of objective and subjective morality, and I think when we most of the time when people talk about this, like 70% of the time, people are completely mangling these definitions and they're not using them in the right way at all.
Agreed.
I was so flabbergasted by the way that Frank Turek in particular was using objective morality in some sense. I remember, and this is, you can look at this recording. He does this talk at different places. I remember him telling the story of a girl, I believe that was either sexually molested or just raped in some way, and said that eventually that this thing that happened to her was a good thing because she eventually found Jesus Christ because of this experience. Like this experience somehow led her to becoming a Christian, like somewhere down the line, and therefore, it was actually kind of like this good in the end. I may be kind of misinterpreting that a little bit, but like that was the gist of what I got from that, right? And I was so mad. I was so shocked when I heard this. I was like, you cannot just call this like objectively good in this sense just because it led to this outcome that was preferable to God, I guess. And so I just got this idea like, okay, I'm just going to call myself objectively Dan, because that's about as meaningful as saying as something is objectively good or objectively wrong, because like it's just words that people are just combining together that just kind of, and I get so desensitized when I hear something is objectively or subjectively good or something. So I just call myself objectively just kind of as a joke, not just really. I don't think it's not that I'm objective, Dan, right? Like I'm not objective about anything, but nobody is, right? But it's just kind of a funny way of combining these two words that don't really go together,
Well, I think objectiveness comes when you've got a group of people that can all agree upon something, each from their own subjective viewpoint, and we come up with, and I got a little laggy, sorry. Yeah. We come up with that consensus where we can call it objective because there's a ton of people that all agree upon what it is. I guess that's about as close as you can come to objective. I
like to think of it as kind of a spectrum, like they're kind of more on the objective side and more on the subjective side. And I'm okay with that definition. Sure. Philosophers can come at me on Twitter. I don't really care. Like I think that works enough for me. I know there's semantic discussions that could be had there, but.
Sure. Just, yeah. Hint, hint, Steve McRae.
Well, hey now.
No, that's okay. I like bugging him. He's hilarious.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, he came on my show, except he told me that he didn't really, he goes, I've told my deconversion story like 1 billion times. Let's talk about something else. I said, okay, we can talk about how you decided to do the non sequitur thing and your atheist activism or your skepticism,
agnostic activism
or whatever. Agnostic, yeah, agnostic activism. Can that even be a thing?
I'm not starting that discussion here. It ain't happening. And here's the thing: if Steve comes on Truth Wanted, which I would love for that to happen, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to put a whole ban on that conversation. I'd rather talk about other things, to be honest with you.
Outside of that, Steve's actually like a one-on-one. Steve's actually a pretty cool guy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't
for sure. Yeah.
We don't see eye to eye on everything, but who the fuck does, right?
Especially in this movement. God forbid. Like that's never going to happen. We're never going to see eye to eye on anything. You know.
I think we had a little Gaudian slip there. God forbid.
Oh yeah. Well, in Texas, you can get away with it. You can pass as Christian wherever you go here. You know, I think that's kind of the difference between areas in the north and areas down here. It's kind of like everyone just kind of assumes you're Christian, where I assume where you're at, it's kind of the opposite, you know, like people, unless you say otherwise, you know.
Yeah, here nobody really assumes anything about you. They look at me and they assume I'm either a pirate or a biker. So
yeah, there you go.
One or the other.
There you go.
So that's about it. Shit, I had something I was going to say too. I think when I have a little bit of a unique story in this respect, is where I was actually born to a Christian family. Like my birth mother and birth father were both like some form of Catholic or Christian or something. I eventually met them too, by the way. But I was given up for adoption. And I think the coolest part of this story is that I was conceived in the backseat of a '57 Chevy, which is one of my favorite cars. Woo. And the weird sort of synchronous thing about that is my father that I knew growing up, I was raised Jewish, by the way, but my father that I knew growing up had a '57 Chevy Bel Air hardtop in the factory specialty colors, which was the teal and white. And he was going to hold on to that car for me for my first car when I came driving age, but his mother made him sell it before they moved out of Florida. So, yeah, I was kind of, when I found out about that, I was like,
yeah, when my dad had a car that was saved for me, by the time I was old enough to drive it, I couldn't fit in it because I'm really big. I'm 6'5", and that was the real problem. It was, I can't remember what it was, but basically, like my knee was up to the steering wheel. Like this, I can't even remember what car it was. This was a while ago.
Yeah, Honda Civic or something.
I think it was like a Civic, yeah, something like that. And anyway, it was my dad. My dad
Police Academy.
Get rid of it anyway, but it was an old piece of junk.
You should have done what Hightower did in Police Academy. Just tore the front seat out and drove it from the back seat.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, sorry, I'm full of old cheesy movie references too. So.
I gotcha. It's okay. Just know that I'm fairly young as far as a lot of. I'd say that. I mean, Cosmic Skeptic is the only guy I know that's out there doing stuff. Well, that's not true. There's other people younger than me, but I'm proud to be a younger face of the movement. So, you know.
Yeah, well, you're the guys that are gonna pick it up after all those older fucks are gone.
Oh, we hope. Right? I don't know, man. Yeah. That's what's okay. I don't know if you had other questions you want to talk about, but that's kind of an interesting thing for me, is the assumption that younger generations just like aren't as religious as the older ones. I think like on the whole, you know, obviously that's true. I think the statistics bear out on that. But when we're talking in groups of like, we're still talking about millions and millions of people that still are in the belief and are still doing some of the same things that older generations have. And I think that's a mistake when we just kind of easily categorize as younger people as like the ones that are going to save us in some respect. Not saying that that's not going to happen. But obviously, I think that eventually has to happen, right? But you know, like there's still work that has to be done. I don't think it's like as natural as a process as people kind of assume it to be sometimes. I don't know. Do you get what I'm trying to say here? Like, you know, totally. Okay, so like for example, I went to American Atheists this past year, and I was like the youngest guy there. There may have been a few other people, but this is not a small conference. This was like, I want to say almost 1,000 people. You know, like it's pretty big, like 800 or so. I could be wrong with those numbers, but like definitely, like mostly people, at least like 10 years older than me and older. A lot of them even older than that. And I thought that was really interesting because we always hear the stereotype of atheists being these young rebels and stuff, but no, it's actually just apparently it's a lot of people older than me. I don't know what the deal is with that, but
well, I do have more questions for you, obviously, in regards to deconversion type stuff. But does your family know?
Okay, well, that's a more complicated question because they do know. They know where I'm at now currently. They know that I do a show to some degree. They don't know how often I do it. They don't know all the details.
Okay.
But they don't know how far in, as far as like, oh, I'm guesting on people's shows and I'm talking at conferences and things like that. Like they're not as like keen on that kind of stuff. And we're at the point in my parents and I's relationship where it's like I just don't bring it up with him, you know, because it's gonna cause nothing but strife and stuff. Other than that, my relationship with my parents is really, really great. But that's definitely a sore subject, especially when it comes to visiting other family and stuff, because my other family doesn't know, and it's kind of so my extended family is all Catholic, and my dad left the Catholic Church when he married my mom, and so there's already that, I don't want to say tension in my family, but differences between my family and my extended family. And then you add on that their kid's an atheist, and that's, you know, it just gets more complicated from there, right?
Does the fact left the Catholic Church, does that kind of take some of the heat off you?
No, I mean, this happened before I was born. So, you know, this was,
I see.
they're all mostly over that, but it's more along the lines of like when we go to visit, like, oh, we don't go to mass and we don't, you know, say the same prayers they do and stuff. So there's just kind of that, I don't know, cultural difference there, I guess.
All right. I just noticed that a friend of mine who hasn't popped into any of my streams in a while just popped in. No Sacred Cows. Hey, cool. Chris, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, I was going to say, I guess you don't want to end up at the point where Seth Andrews, where he's now has to like block his parents from messaging him and stuff like that. They just don't want to let it go.
And you know, when I was first coming out, like, and talking to them about this, it was awful. It was so bad. And I think that's always going to kind of be there on some level. I don't know how fully my parents would accept where I'm at right now, unfortunately to say. But I will say that, I mean, you know this too. When you know other people and you get involved with this, I can name you a dozen people's stories that are worse than mine, as far as you know, how the coming out process works. So I'm very lucky in that sense, and I want to be there and be a voice for people and be a person that people can be comfortable talking to when they're going through that struggle as well. Because I had a lot of people who gave me a lot of support when that whole process was happening and stuff, and they definitely made that a lot easier.
Yeah, that's always good if you've got a good backbone, we'll say, of people that are there with you that can help you through this sort of thing, because it's not easy to go through for a lot of people, especially if their family members are mostly like quite fundamentalist or quite evangelical even. It can be pretty tough. Have you lost any friends because of this, like that found out about this?
You know, my friend's situation got more complicated when this happened. Yeah, that's my cat there. Because I was at a point where I was, you know, working in ministry with people, and so for the most part, I quietly left that scene. I didn't really make a big announcement to them or anything, but my closest friends knew why. And whether or not they tell, I know people talk. I know that they've told other people about it. I don't know the extent of how many people in my previous life know. In fact, I've gone and I've visited people and I've talked with friends, and as far as I know, with some of them, they definitely still think, you know, I'm still a believer and stuff, and I'm okay with that. But most of my close friends are still with me. Actually, I had a text from someone I worked in the ministry with this past week checking in on me. And I like him. He's a great guy, but he's one of those guys that where I know he's checking in on me because I think he thinks that I was like jaded by Christians and he wants to be like a good face for Christianity and stuff. Like it feels more like evangelism to me than it does friendship sometimes, and that's kind of rough, but you know, it's what can you do? I have so many good friends now too.
Yeah, well, yeah, you've probably made a ton more since becoming more prevalent in the atheism, right? So
absolutely.
Do you credit Anthony a little bit for helping you through this?
So yeah, like I've always been very, very, very clear from the very beginning when I first talked about this. Anthony was just like one stepping stone on my
Mm-hmm.
path.
Okay.
I think if you're on the other side of this, you might see this as, oh, Anthony was like the sole influencer. He really wasn't. I was really going through a lot of the doubts myself at the time. But having that real life interaction as opposed to just watching YouTube videos and reading comments and stuff, that's a game changer. You know, like talk with people
Yep.
in a real life space about it does change things. So I give him credit where credit's due. And you know, Anthony has never said either, yeah, look at this guy that I convinced to be, you know, that's never happened. If you
I
ever
can't
meet
see
Anthony,
him
man, like,
doing that.
oh, Anthony's first of all, I got to give props to Anthony as well. One, because we're good friends, but also because when I was going through that time of kind of coming out and stuff, he really reached out to me. He was like, man, if you need a place to stay, if you want to join some spaces here, I can get you connected and stuff. And he was really, really great about that. He is the nicest guy. And I'm so proud to be his friend, and I'm so proud to be associated with him. But you know, side tangent for that, I guess, is that he's a cool guy, and definitely don't think ill of him. I know some people think like, oh, his whole thing is he's trying to convert people, and he's trying to bring people to the atheist army, and like it is such the opposite. If you ever really know him, like I'm telling you, as a dude who had a conversation with him, even then in that conversation, I knew, oh, this guy just wants to talk. Like he's not trying to, you know. So
well, he's trying to understand beliefs and why people believe what they do, and that's what SE is all about, right? So I mean, that's what epistemology is about. Is about beliefs and why do we think that these beliefs are true or real or whatever. So that which kind of attracted me to the whole idea behind SE and to want to talk to people about it. You know, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my channel when I first decided I wanted to have my voice heard in the atheist community. And doing some research, I'm like, okay, there's lots of guys that are doing debunk videos. There's lots of guys that are doing skeptical type stuff. There's lots of guys that are doing, you know, like Apologia with the AIG stuff, which is just hysterical. And I thought, all right, I don't see too many out there. I think I found one or two other channels that talk to people about deconversions. And I said, okay, this seems to be a bit of a void. Maybe I should pick that up because I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy getting to know people, especially people that I've watched on YouTube or within the community or even live sometimes. And I want to get to know these guys a little bit better so that they can, you know, see me as well as a positive force for atheism. And I thought that deconversion stories would be a good way to do that because it can help people that are having questions too, right? And I looked at it as something along the lines of street epistemology, where you are sort of helping people think about what they believe. And hey, this person is going through something that's almost identical to me, yet they made it free and clear of this belief system. Maybe I can do that too. Right? So hopefully I help out in that fashion. But so that's kind of why I decided to get in there too.
Yeah, you know, I felt the same way when I was like, oh, I want to get more active and involved. It's like, oh, there's so many people covering so many niches. Like, where do you even start? And I actually didn't start as a call-in show. I wanted to just use the ACA kind of studio and equipment to do like SE kind of stuff out on the street with people, or even just having people come in the studio live every single time and just do conversations like that. The call-ins came later when Vern, Lord of the Levels, if you know him and you see the piece of mod on my stream and stuff, kind of suggested to me, is like, you know, like we have this call-in equipment stuff here. You know, you should take advantage of the stuff that we got going on at the ACA. And I was like, you know, that is true. Like, how many people have access to a studio where they can take in calls from people with a dedicated number and stuff? You know, like that takes a lot of stuff. So I kind of took that and tried to take the legacy of what AXP and Talk Heathen and other call-in shows have been doing, but kind of give a fresh spin on it with SE. And I think it's been a pretty good project so far. I think people like it, and getting the guest host in every week is definitely was a it's so hard to schedule everything and make sure everybody's gonna come in on the right time and stuff. But it's so worth it to get so many great voices from the community and stuff. It's and just talking to other people. It's my favorite thing. Honestly, it's so cool.
It is, and it looks like a lot of fun. And I'd be honored, and I'd be totally pleased to come and join you for an episode. And I'll even give up my band practice night to do that. So there you go, because I take my music seriously, man.
Sounds good.
People tend to like it too. I mean, Godless Cranium was using one of my tunes as his outro for a couple of months, right? So, and even Aaron Ra, when he heard one of my songs when I was in a stream with him, it wasn't live or anything. He was just a Patreon thing, and I gave him a link, and he was like, "Holy shit, this is really good stuff, man!" And this is Aaron, who's like Mr. Metal, right? Oh yeah. And I'm like, oh, he likes it. Wow, that's fucking cool, right? So. Yeah, getting kudos from that guy is like huge.
Man, I could tell you some stories about Arn, but the best thing about Arn is his internet persona and his real life persona are the exact same thing. There is no difference between those two characters, and he's just fucking cool. He's just a cool guy to hang out with, you know.
Beer with him bad because like he likes the good chocolate stouts and stuff like that, and the porters and whatnot. He was just talking about one of the ones he's been trying recently. On I think it was Non-Sec. I think I saw him on. I don't know why he goes on that show, man. At the end of it, it's like he just wants to pound his head into a wall talking to some of these creationists.
He loves it. He loves it, dude. I mean, you don't do stuff as long as he does without loving it a little bit, right?
Agreed, for sure. Yeah, I'm open to meet a bunch of people that I watch regularly and admire quite a bit while I'm down there. It seems to be where all the cool people hang out is in Texas, right? So,
I don't know what it is, man. There's a lot of us that come from Texas. I think it's just a backfire effect from the religious culture here, maybe. You know,
could be, right? You guys are like the belt buckle of the Bible Belt.
So. Basically, that's what I say. Yeah.
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 You got to get a Texas belt buckle now.
I do. Right? I'm down for that.
The Bible Belt buckle.
New Patreon goal, right?
Excuse me, one quick sec here. I have my little cooler here. Oh, here, I'll show you something cool. I got this from, what do you call it? Evolvefish.com. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
That's no mask.
Yeah, for
people
sure.
People see that in the fridge at work where I work, and they're like, I didn't know you were an atheist. I go, because I don't really talk about it here, man.
When my parents found my Atheist Experience shirt that I had, they took it away. They hid it from me. And they
what? Seriously?
Yeah, and I was like, so I'm not allowed to like express myself and stuff. And they're like, no, but you're just living here with us right now, and we, you know, anyway, it was a whole thing. I still don't know where it is actually, but yeah, it's just one of those things.
Well, I've got one here. If you need another one, Dan, we look like we're probably around the same size. So
you know what? I think if I really want to get one, I could probably get one from the ACA myself. I appreciate the offer, though.
Well, I think that I could also easily get another one too, right? Because I'll just send away for another one. Like I got one of Aaron's things. He gave me or sent me a shirt with the, you know, science doesn't know everything, but religion doesn't know anything, and he autographed it, which was pretty cool. I'm going to probably be buying a bunch. I've thrown $2,500 into an account that I'm holding until I get down there so I can spend some money in Texas.
Oh yeah, we won't. You know, we're not going to have a lot of merch at the actual conference. I don't know who's going to be bringing anything if they are. We'll see how that goes, but you know, it'll be a real small venue.
Yeah, but do you know who's actually confirmed to be there?
Oh yeah,
from the group that puts together everything.
Oh yeah, we have a list of people who are speakers that's been made public. So like Rachel Oates, Telltale Atheist, Genetically Modified Skeptic, Eric Murphy, Holy Kool-Aid, Apologia, Shannon Q, Cyrus the Skeptic, me. Let's see, Rationality Rules, Cosmic Skeptic's gonna be there. Of course, you're gonna be there. Yeah, it's a whole lineup. I think that's everybody that's speaking. I'll be really sad if I missed anybody, but I think that's everybody.
quite a few people. Nobody's asked me to speak yet, so I'm not looking.
Next year, dude. Next year, we'll make it happen.
I don't even. I heard subs, like like just I just like broke 300.
What do you think's going to happen by this time next year?
I'm hoping to be upwards in the numbers that you are, which we've wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, I have another channel, but it's based in Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game, trading card game.
Right.
Because my ex-wife's kids kind of got me hooked on that shit. So I started a YouTube channel called Saris13.
I'm into it.
And
I like it.
I'm not into Yu-Gi-Oh.
I'm into people having channels about trading cards that they really like. Game recognizes game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, check it out. It's like what we call reality kind of TV. I kind of set it up like a reality TV show where I go to locals and I go to the big YCS tournaments and I go to all the big tournaments and the kids want me to sign players. Man, it's great.
That's awesome. I was playing the this is such a side thing, but I was I play emulators from time to time, just to kind of de-stress, I guess. And recently, as in like a month or two ago, I got into the old Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy.
Nice.
And that shit is fun, dude. Like I went ahead and beat it, and then I played the second one, which was only released in Japan, and I got an English translation of it that somebody did and played that. But yeah,
that's cool.
I mean, it's in Hearthstone. It used to be in Hearthstone. I don't play it as much these days, but
yeah, I kind of tried it a bit, and I ended up downloading Duel Links instead, and I play that quite a bit. What about Pokemon Go? You play Pokemon Go?
When it first came out, I was all over that. Actually, interestingly, when that first came out, I was working at the Christian camp still, and we actually didn't have any cell phone service out there. So we could only use it when we were at Wi-Fi spots, and plus, I'm working most of the day, so I couldn't get in on the trend because I didn't have any service to catch Pokemon on. It's probably a good thing. At the end, I probably ended up saving myself a lot more time. But
well, sure. I mean, yeah, I found that I got wrapped into that quite easily, and next thing you know, 3 hours have gone by, and you're sitting in a park somewhere by a Pokestop, and you're like catching everybody, and it's like, wait a minute, shit, I was supposed to be at dinner an hour ago.
Yeah.
So it can happen. Gaming does that.
It does that, man.
Happens.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be a crotchety old man about gaming, but yeah, it's like there's not as many good things about it as there used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't game as much as I used to, and I still the last system I have is still sitting over there, and that's a PS3. And I like to throw Batman Arkham Asylum in there every once in a while and run through that again because that's one of my favorites.
Love me some Batman. Yeah,
exactly.
That's some good stuff. Anyway, I don't know if your viewers care about us talking about video games. I'm sure I don't know if that's
what they are used to my chats often derailing onto other topics.
Yeah,
and they complained because a friend of mine down in Australia and I were talking about cars, and some of them kind of complained about that. But but this is what happens. I mean, we basically covered your deconversion anyways. There's really only Sassy Atheist says she loves to play Sims 3, which is actually a pretty fun game too. Basically, I do after parties for this. I don't know if you have a little extra time where you want to sit in for 10 minutes just to chat with a couple other people.
Oh yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll close this down and I'll send you a new link because I've already set it up in the events. So and you can jump in and I'm going to go and use the washroom, and I generally have a quick smoke in between these, and then I come back. So I'm sure I know that Godless Iowan, who's in the chat as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that my friend, well, he was anyways. I don't know if he's still there, but I'm sure he's going to want to and say hello to you. So
cool.
Another guy who would probably want to talk to you about coming on his show is my friend David Worley, who does the Worley DR podcast.
Been there, done that. Been on.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh shit! You know what? Now that I think about it, I've actually fucking seen that episode. Dude, I get so scrambled sometimes because I watch so many things. Because when I'm at work, I work in a lab, right? I'm a chemist for an environmental company, and I basically reblend antifreeze from waste antifreeze into brand new stuff, and then I got to run it through a gamut of tests like pH and ion and reserve alkalinity, that kind of shit. So I'm in the lab. So I basically throw your show on, the AXP, Talk Even, as stuff from Dear Mr. Atheist, Mr. Deity, who's hilarious, by the way, and people like that. And so I listen to these shows right through. And sometimes I interact, like when I was on your show with Paulogia, where I was at the time, it was really noisy, so I couldn't hear it. But I was just communicating with people in the chat, just to let you know, hey, I'm here, and stuff like that. And then I listened to it at the after later on, sort of thing. You're old, you're forgetful. Yes, thank you, Sassy Atheist. This is why we call her Sassy Atheist.
Right.
All right. So what we'll do is, by the way, Dan, for taking the time to chat with me today. It's
absolutely
been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. We all I love how in this movement we can all kind of support each other and be on each other's shit all the time, man. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's
totally. I'm still trying to drag Paulo G on here. We've communicated and stuff, but he's taking his time picking a day. So we'll have to
intimidate him in person.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
6. I'm like you. I'm like a big motherfucker. So like I'm 6'4", dude. With my biker boots on, I'm I'll be like. Anyway, all right, guys. You know what happens now. I usually do an after party, as you all know. Many of you have been in them. So I will put a link in my group chat if you would like to join and say hello to Dan here. He's promised to hang out with us for a little bit. So basically, Dan, that's all I'll do is I'll send you a fresh link. Once again, thanks for joining me today. And thank you, everybody in the chat, for hanging out with us. I had a great time with you, dude. I know we kind of got off the deconversion there for a bit and sidetracked on other cool stuff. Well, cool to you and me, but maybe not so much of that. Exactly. But they hung around for the ride anyways. But it is time to abandon ship. So, all right. Alias Fake Name said to say thank you. And No Sacred Cow says he's the actual biker between us. So, by the way, No Sacred Cows actually lives near me. So we talk to each other quite a bit. So, all right, guys, you know what I always say at the end of these things is an old Hitchens quote that says, remember, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.